Everybody's tense these days. It was tense last night at the city council meeting, and Mayor Jim Ardis had to listen to a lot of people talk about what we're calling Twittergate. Now other people have stolen that from us, Dan, and we appreciate it.
No.
Mayor, we're going to ask you this question right up front. It seems to me that what is going on with a lot of people's anger is that they believe you abused your position as mayor and asked for a personal favor from the Peoria Police Department. How do you respond to that?
I did ask our legal department if I had legal grounds to go after the people that did that. I didn't ask the police department that because that's not who I thought you would ask. They're the enforcement branch.
So you go to the legal department, and the legal department is the city attorneys? Is that?
I did.
And again, for I can't believe anybody doesn't know what this is, but somebody faked a Twitter account in your name with your likeness, with your contact information, said vile, horrible things that we can't even say on this radio station. So you were like any of us, upset about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What's the process? Because here's what people think: you called the chief of police, who you're his boss, and you go, get on this. And you call judges and you call Jerry Brady and go, I want this done. Yeah. I mean, that's what's in people's minds.
I totally believe that is what people think, that I have the power to pull levers at the police department, at the state's attorney's office, and the judges. And it's
take us through the process.
Well, I can't even tell you what happens once the things go through the state's attorney's office and how you go. I don't know how you.
What did you do though?
Yeah, but so. Man, you guys got a lot of questions ready for me. I'm trying to answer them. So I called the legal department and asked. They conferred with the state's attorney's office. They researched it and said, "Well, it looks like you can't impersonate a public official." So I said, "Well, I would like to have this taken down. And if there's a way to prosecute this person, I'd like you to do that." I said it. I meant it. I still do. I don't know what, after they determined that it was illegal to do that, I don't know what that process is or was to assemble the information. I know there was computer forensic guys that figure out however they do that on the internet to find out where that person is. And they eventually got the information they needed to ask a judge to allow for a search warrant to go in and be able to get the equipment to say they did it. I don't know what that. I really don't know what that process is, and I don't know how I couldn't put together what you need to put a search warrant together, or so all that happens outside of my complaint.
When did you actually make the inquiry to the legal department and say, if there's something here, I'd like to pursue it? Do you know the date on that?
Even to right now, I don't remember. Actually, I don't know how long that website was up before it got brought to my attention. I don't know if it was up a day, a week, several weeks.
Okay, so a lot of people's question is, why? Why even bring attention to this? Supposedly it only had 50 Twitter followers. Half of them might have been the media. Mm-hmm. And it originally was you. They were impersonating you. There's no doubt about that.
That's the key.
Right.
That's the key.
And then they changed it to a parody, and then allegedly Twitter told them to shut it down. So it was shut down. I think a lot of people go, why even pursue this?
So I guess the premise at the very beginning part of it was that it was not a parody. It was me. And people scoff at it, but and we all worry about our identities all the time, getting your identity stolen, having some people use your identity to do whatever and bankrupt you, do whatever they want with you. The guy stole my identity. I can't say it any simpler than that. It was not fake Jim Ardis account. It was nothing. It was Jim Ardis's picture in front of City Hall with social pictures of me in different occasions and a lot of different statements that was me. And again, this. I was totally prepared last night to read portions of those Twitter, whatever they tweets, okay? So, acknowledging that it would probably, most likely, I don't think that was probably something that would survive to be used on your station or on TV. But I was totally prepared to say these are some excerpts of what they said, and I'm vile, disgusting, all that stuff. It was, and it was aimed at me, and it gave inferences to prostitutes, drugs. I don't know that I've, even in my college days, I don't know if I've seen or read what was attributed to me. And again, it was me saying it. So to your point, that I think to me the first question is it right or wrong? Is the freedom of speech, is it an absolute right to say anything, anytime, anywhere about anybody, even if I'm saying I'm you and saying it? Is that still all okay? It's kind of, to me, is it or isn't it?
Well,
okay, now just so you answer that question first. To me, I don't think you can say. I mean, you can't yell fire in a crowded auditorium. Okay, you can't do that. So the freedom of speech is not absolute. Okay, so you go back to the premise of can you do it or not? I say you can't do it. So then you say, well, there was only 50. However, they know that there was only 50 people on it. My understanding from people that know, I don't do Twitter. I don't do Facebook. So because 50 people were following this, that doesn't mean there was only 50 people. It means 50 people signed up to do it. Okay, get by that. If you're saying it's wrong, and only 50 people were watching or whatever they do to it, so I'm establishing or trying to establish it's wrong. So if it gets to, so what's the right number? Is it 150, or is it 250, or is it 500? So let's say it's 500. So when it's 500, I say, dude, you can't do that, man. You're not even saying it's parody. It's me. You're saying Jim Ardis is saying this stuff, and you say I don't like that, and then the guy comes back and he goes, well, dude, why didn't you say something when there was only 50 people? Why'd you wait till it got to 500? I mean, that argument, the only 50 argument, to me doesn't hold any more water than any of the rest of it.
And if I may explain something, because I know you and Dan are not Twitter guys, you're right about that. Because if somebody wanted to retweet, they don't have to be following you to resend it out to. They may have 5,000 followers. So Greg Batten may have 5,000. I see the fake Jim Ardis thing. I may hit retweet, send it to my 5,000. Now that 50 became 5,050. Yeah. And every one of those 50s could be doing that. I do want to say one other thing, though. You mentioned about you can't say fire. Dan mentioned this a while ago, too. You can't say fire in a theater. Well, you can do it, but there's a penalty.
Okay.
That's my point.
Okay.
On free speech, I think, today I can say vile words on this radio station. And if Dan doesn't punch the button that stops it from happening and getting out over the air, I can do it. I will lose my job. This radio station will be penalized. So there ends where we are. Mm-hmm. This person, in my point of view, is that this person did something of which there is a law. We read it yesterday, and I believe it's not just public officials that are protected. I think we are all protected against somebody protecting or pretending to be us online. We're protected. There's a law. He broke the law. Now, the question, though, Jim, I think what we're going to try to pull back on is, was it too heavy-handed, the manner in which this was enforced? And I know you're saying no role in that, but I think that's where the public's anger is, wait a minute, all right, okay, well, maybe the guy did break the law, but for goodness sakes, people knocking on his door and taking all his stuff, and then another guy ancillarily, if that's a word, gets arrested for something else. It seems a little militaristic. How do you respond to that?
Well, again, whether people choose to believe it or not, after the complaint, that was it for me. I mean, I have been told by the police that there was 4 people there. Right. So then four detectives in detective gear. No helmets. They weren't. Yeah, they weren't in riot gear. Right. I've heard that the house didn't get tossed. That like you see on TV, that they went in. They got the stuff that they were allowed to get, the other stuff that was in plain sight that was illegal, kind of like you were talking about earlier. If you don't do illegal stuff, you don't have to worry about it. But it was what it was. I can't speak to the heavy-handed part because I think that's from what I've heard from people that aren't exaggerating. I don't think that it was this rousted, tossed the house and turned it upside down and they left.
And you have to take the computers. I have heard people say, well, they took the computers. Well, yeah, you have to do that because that's the crime. Yeah. The crime is computer related.
Yeah, because people are like, well, you can't just walk in and take his computer. And I'm like, maybe. And this is just supposition. But I would imagine if it got to the state's attorney's office and then he went to judges and they go, well, if you're going to pursue this thing, you need evidence. You can't, what's out in Twitter's not it. I need hard evidence. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure the state's attorney just said, well, then I guess I need the computers. That's
my understanding. And it's also just because this computer was in this house and this person had a internet account. I don't think that it necessarily means that they used that computer to do. Somebody else could have used that computer to do what they did.
Sure.
So they're trying to somehow, however they do that, that's how they're trying to verify who did it.
And that's why no arrest has been made yet.
I guess so.
That would be my guess. I
that's
don't
what
know
I
either.
guess too.
All right, hang tight. Mayor Jim Ardis is in our studio. It is 7:19. Greg and Dan, WMPD traffic and weather and traffic, a mess over at Glen and University. We'll tell you more about that coming up. 100.3 WMPD, the Greg and Dan Show. We're looking at 40 degrees. Mayor Jim Ardis in our studio. Last night's city council meeting was full, and it was full of very opinionated and strongly worded thought. The mayor, what was your reaction to last night's folks who came up and spoke out and said that they thought you were heavy-handed in this whole Twitter thing, or even fellow council members said, I think it was Mr. Weaver who said, there seems to be a lot of this. I didn't know what he was referring to, but he said something to that effect, that we need to make sure that this doesn't get out of control. This, I assume, is heavy-handed approaches to things,
or maybe appearance of heavy-handed,
or appearances.
And, I got to work with these council folks, and they all got elected to that seat. They all have a vote that is exactly equal to mine. So, nobody has always the same opinions, and I respect that. I'll say unequivocally that there's a lot of politics in everybody's discussions. So I'll just say it. There is. There's political implications. It's not just about what happened and when. Some of the comments were, I don't have any specific comment about any of my council
that's fine.
colleagues.
Do you have confidence in Chief Settingsguard?
120%.
Yesterday there was somebody that hung a banner off one of the overpasses. I think everybody saw that story for a second, and we assume they were talking about the chief because it said fire Steve. Your thoughts on criticisms of him?
You know what? Again, all this information in terms of the investigation is going to come out. There were people that were recently elected that came in with they thought that they were going to go after the chief over things with an investigation and with the councilman last year that were proved to be totally ridiculous. And now they think for whatever reason that the chief did something wrong on this one. I'll tell you that there's been a number of police chiefs in Peoria since I've been down there. I know all of them and like all of them. There's never been one that is the caliber of this chief that we have in terms of the integrity that he has, the job he's doing, and we were kind of off air talking about sometimes don't you feel like just walking away and saying gosh man, I've probably had enough of this. Here's a guy that would be one of the biggest losses to our community in terms of what he's brought here, the integrity and level of service at our police department. If he were to walk, and it's going to happen someday. But for all these people that. And there's not that many people. It's the vocal minority, just like it always is. It would be very unfortunate. I support the chief. I've never seen anything that would indicate that he did anything improper or out of line.
What is the checks and balances within the system? For instance, Chuck Weaver said at some point we should have had a gut check on this, and someone from the public says, well, who's going to pay for the lawsuit? Does legal look at this and go, all right, we have to make sure we're going by the letter of the law and we're not opening ourselves up to a lawsuit?
Well, in this case, it wasn't something because it was criminal. It wasn't something that our legal department, they had an opinion on it, but it wasn't only their opinion. So there's a check and balance, because the criminal experts and the ones that would be in a position to prosecute that crime, if all the investigation proves it accurate, they're the ones that said that. So I mean, there's a check and balance right there. I'd say there's the next check and balance from the judicial side that at least said, we agree that the stuff you're showing us corroborates the charge against this state statute that says you can't do it. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, yeah. And coming up in a bit, I want you to answer this question. Some people would say, well, look, really this is minor. You've kind of answered it in a way, but I want to have you re-answer this. This is kind of minor. In your position as mayor, you should have thicker skin. Why even pursue this?
Yeah, hold on to that thought. Mayor Jim Ardis in our studio. Greg and Dan, WMBD. 1470, 100.3 WMBD at 7:39. 40 degrees is the temperature. Mayor Jim Ardis kind enough to stick around for a little while. Talk about this Twitter story.
If you are just tuning in, to recap, Jim, you said, look, I didn't call the police chief up and say, I want you to get this done and get Jerry Brady, and I'm going to call the judges. You just went to legal, and from there the process took place. Whether it was heavy-handed or not, you don't really know. It wasn't 7 stormtroopers, as reported in the paper or alluded to. It was 4,
guys
agents,
in windbreakers.
Yeah. And there was no apparent, from what you know, ransacking. They basically went and took the computers. And by the way, they did bust someone else for having pot in there. And then the other thing is you don't know when the Twitter account was shut down or anything like that. You just felt violated that someone, I mean, these were unbelievably vile statements, that they were impersonating you, and you took offense as a person, and so you said, and especially there's a law you can't impersonate a public official. Now, some people will say, and this is the question I had before, you're mayor. You should have thicker skin. This wasn't that big of a deal. Why even pursue it? And now it's, it seems to be everywhere.
If I guess, maybe I think my parents and my upbringing was pretty good, and I think that it was always like, it's right or wrong. It's, that's the decision here. And frankly, I said, can they do this? I don't know. I can do my email pretty good. The rest of I don't do social media. I don't have time to do social media. I don't want to do social media. But I just said, when it came to my attention, and I got on there, because when somebody said, this guy's got something up there that's you, I couldn't, when I got on there and saw what it was, and I'm looking through this going, how can they do that?
Using your picture.
My picture, again, we talked about this, my picture, all my contact information, has me in front of City Hall. In the course of this thing, in front of other pictures that they put up there with, I think I can say crack whores on the air, but all these other pictures, they're social pictures of me. So there's nothing to indicate that it's not me. And all I said was, can they really do this? Is this legal? Can they do that?
And you said that to your legal department.
I did.
Yeah.
And they, they didn't just say yes or no. They said, we'll find out.
Let me ask you this. This is another one that's related to what Dan just asked you, and that is, do you believe that an average person, Joe Blow that works at Caterpillar, has the same issue? Would he get the same response from the police department? Because that's at the heart of this, I think. Mm-hmm. I think some people think, well, this guy got his stuff taken and his buddy got arrested for pot and all that. Not because that it wouldn't have happened, or if somebody had taken my identity, I wouldn't get that response from the police department. They would just tell me, yeah, we'll look into it, and I'd never hear of it again.
And that's the question that has been asked since the beginning. And as I think through it, I'm going, all right. I think the difference is it was determined that this was criminal. Okay, mm-hmm. It's not a civil thing where
mm-hmm.
somebody was. You're a guy that works or a lady that works at Caterpillar, and somebody's impersonating you or whatever. I don't know. You said you think everybody's protected. I don't know
From what we found out, you cannot impersonate another person,
okay.
public official
okay.
or not.
So all I know is from my standpoint, it was determined it was criminal, which goes through the state's attorney's office. I would assume anybody that has had a criminal act committed against them that goes to the state's attorney's office, they're going to respond to it. That's my assumption.
That's my assumption too. But I will say, Dan and I watch and we listen and kind of get the pulse of things. There is not just in Peoria. There's a part of our society that believes that is not true.
I don't disagree.
The only important people will get the attention.
I don't disagree. Yeah. Well, I've never heard anybody. I can say this, and you could, this may be on a slow day when you're trying to think of something else to talk about. Not that that's ever happened to you
Thank
guys.
you, Jim. I appreciate it.
But open the lines to say, have you ever had a criminal act perpetrated against you that you called the state's attorney's office that they said we don't have time for this? I've never heard of one, but I don't know.
Possibly it's out there.
I don't know.
The way this was portrayed in the media, how do you feel about it?
I think columnist that wrote on this the other day said that he thinks that sometime I probably take too much issue with the media's bias, if you will, or the fact that the media in general talks much more on the negative things in Peoria than on the positive, and I couldn't agree. There's not many things I agree with that guy about. That is one, and you guys know that because we've had that discussion in here. The glass half empty, half full thing. I really think, and I don't think it's wrong to say this because this is what I think. I think because of the association that a lot of people at the Peoria newspaper had with the person that did this, what I understand, I think that has skewed a lot of the information that's come out on this and how it's been portrayed. I think if at the very beginning it's unbelievably crystal clear that this person, because they just say, well, it was a parody account and the mayor shut it down. If people understood that it was not a parody account when it went up, and the reason I was pissed was because it was me. We've talked about it was me. It was my picture. It was everything. If the media would have done a better job of saying, I say it's stolen identity. I mean, I don't know how you fairly if you think that's too strong of how it's described. But I think if the media does a better job of saying, this is what they did, this is why the mayor did that, I think it somewhat dilutes the argument that this guy just has a thin skin. If there was more actual discussion and description of the content of that original Twitter, whatever it is, at the very beginning before they put parody up there, I think that the discussion changes a little bit, but it's part of the business that you guys are in to somehow incite reactions, pro, con, or indifferent, and that's what people are doing to drive people to your radio station, to buy people to buy the Journal-Star because they go in the other direction, and they are going the other direction, not just with the Journal, but with all print media. But that's what the media is driven to, and it's driven to that on CNN, it's driven to that on Fox, it's driven to that on it's polarization,
right.
on
Indignation.
On all counts.
Indignation's big money, making people indignant about something. I want to go back to something you said that I was unaware of, and I don't know how much you can extrapolate or explain. I didn't know there was a relationship between this individual and people who work at the Journal-Star. There's,
and just when you look at, and by relationship, I'm not inferring that, I'm not inferring anything other than there is a whole bunch of Journal-Star people that were the people that were following this, and as some of them that I've talked to have acknowledged that, they kind of knew about it all the time.
I don't think that's just exclusive to the Journal, to be fair. I think that there are other members of the media that were aware of it, including people that work in this building. So,
but they don't have the.
But I don't. But know they don't have. But you're not saying they're friends or anything.
No, I'm not saying that, but I'm also not saying that those other. Or what I am saying is those other media people or other people that work in your building, whatever else, they don't have the ability to put the story out that some of these other people have.
Gotcha.
The police. They went in, again, not 7-4, they went in, took the computers. In the checks and balances system, some people said that was too much, okay. In the checks and balances system within a government like the city, do people then go back and go, okay, let's review what they did, make sure it was legal, make sure they did a good job, weren't too heavy-handed? Is that part of the system?
I think that there's, I don't know if there's a instance-by-instance oversight, but I mean, there are internal investigation people within police departments that do that. I don't know if there was any video taken. I don't know that. I don't know if they videotaped it to say this is what we did or didn't do. I doubt if every time they execute a search warrant they do video on top of it. That's just another person.
Sure.
But I think that the check and balances is the internal investigations within any department that would look into.
And if
that.
someone decries this was heavy-handed, they threw over everything, then then the internal investigation. Okay, we'll look into it and see. Is that how it works?
That's what I know.
Mayor Jim Ardis, we appreciate you coming in. This is a way more complicated thing than I assume you started. You wanted to, when you just complained, hey, this guy's taking my identity and I'm upset about it. It's taken a life of its own.
Yeah.
One more thought.
It has. You know, my closing comment is, I don't apologize, and I'm not going to, and I'm not taking a stand on that. But this is what I didn't have a real good opportunity to express last night. I would have never brought. I mean, the last thing in the world I would do is bring negative publicity down on this town. And if I would have thought that, and I still think I acted appropriately and within my rights. And so far, I think the legal people think I have too. It's yet to be determined. But obviously the national, international media attention is the last thing in the world I would do. So if there's an apology, it's that this was an unintended consequence. I love this town. I wouldn't do anything to disparage it. But until the day I die, I'm going to stand for. Everybody talks about freedom of speech and their rights. I have the right to protect my name and my integrity. And that's my freedom of speech. And I can't find anybody that can tell me that you or anybody else has the right to be me and say and speak for me. And you're not going to convince me of that. So, we'll see what happens here. It's been, the blowback has been unfortunate. But I have always been raised to stand for your principles and stand for what's right and what's wrong, and that's, as far as I know, what I'm doing.
Mayor Jim Ardis, traffic and weather next. Greg and Dan, WMBD.